Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
All right, welcome to another Peers Over Beers. My name is Chris Detzel, and I have a very special guest that I'm super excited to talk to today,
Tiffany Oda.
Tiffany Oda. Tiffany, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you, Chris?
Doing great. Tell me a little bit about you, your background, and what you do in the community space.
Yeah, so I am based in San Francisco. I've been in community since about 2016 and really found myself focused on loving kind of the operational components of community. So, a lot of times when you're talking about community, you're talking about community management, engagement, moderation, things like that. There's a whole slew of things on the other side in terms of, setting up the processes, working on scaling and automation, the tech stack, kind of all of the things behind the scenes that keeps the gears turning and the lights on. And I found myself really loving that aspect of it. And so right now I am the director of community operations for a cybersecurity company called Venafi. I am also a strategic community consultant for a startup called TalkBase.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. We're working on building a platform specifically for community operations, actually, which is pretty cool. And then I am the co-founder and co-leader of Community Observations, which is a community group. We meet monthly to talk about all things community operations. And I lead that with Cassie Mays, who's doing community operations over at Atlassian.
Yeah, I've heard of her too. And I think I've talked to her in the past. That's great.
Oh, cool. She's amazing.
Yeah, the operations piece we don't talk a lot about on, we kind of talk about on Peers Over Beers, but we don't really, a lot of times there's not just specific people that own it. For me, different people in the organization own different parts of, the tech stack. So I own the community platform, but, somebody else obviously owns different pieces of that. So I'm interested. One is to understand about what that tech stack could look like, for, community.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, I think the community platform is probably the center of a tech stack architecture for community. And that's something that, we do typically own. But then aside from that, there are things like the company CRM. How are we tracking, these are the customers that we have, the individuals, and then these are the people who are in the community. Maybe there are prospects who are also dabbling in community and they could be really good community qualified leads. Being able to
love
track...
this conversation, by the way. Keep going.
Oh, good.
Music
Awesome.
to my ears.
And then also things like engagement. So, looking in terms of, customer health score. So you could look at your customer success platform that could be tied to both your CRM as well as your community platform that shows, yes, these are the customers that are interacting in the community and these are their relative health scores. And then you might be able to see some sort of correlation with customers with a higher health score are more often than not in the community versus, people who with lower health scores. Then you also have, the marketing automation. So obviously there's a lot of communications that have to go out working with community, whether you're inviting people to a community event or, sharing an update with them on a program or doing some sort of cool launch or surprise and delight initiative. That's usually not necessarily directly managed by the community team, but you're working with maybe your marketing operations or your sales operations people. And then there's support as well. So, integrating with your support portal, whether it's like, a Service Cloud or a Zendesk, and being able to see case deflection. So, who is sending cases in, who's getting pointed to the community, who's going to the community, and how is going to the community and getting those resources, deflecting cases away from the support team. And then I would say like a last main bucket in the tech stack architecture could be product. So product ideation, really big in community, being able to provide feedback and ideas to the product team. And then how does that product team go and triage those ideas? How do they incorporate it in the roadmap? How do they provide workarounds to those community members, and being able to kind of tie, again, customer activity and engagement within the community to how that's affecting our product roadmap and providing that visibility. And then you have the tangential tools like the Zapiers and the, the project management tools and things like that. So kind of touches everything. It's really a big job that, community managers don't have time to do that.
I love that job. I mean, I wouldn't love the job, but I would love to hire somebody for that job.
Right.
Because I think it's extremely important. So when the things that you hear a lot on, kind of the higher level goals are community helps in these things. Now, depending on what your community is about, but, for us, I'll give you just a scenario and would love to kind of get your thoughts on, is this possible? Things like that, so I built this, I call it community show, but webinar program that we go deep into the product. And when new products come out or new features come out, we go deep into that area so that people know them, so that people adopt them and things like that. So, and then of course we create lots of content, to from just those webinars. But what I tell folks, hey, look, in community, when people are asking questions, when they're engaged and when they have access to PMs or PS or engineering or, whatever the case is, folks want access, giving them that access live and things is pretty awesome. And the numbers show, but, the things that are hard to prove, from a, upsell, cross sell, renewing at higher rates, renew more, those are hard things to kind of prove out. I think it's possible. I think that, you could correlate, community activity and community led things to, renewal rates or upsell, cross sell. I think it's probably harder to do, but that's, you hear those things a lot of, community does help with upsell, cross sell, but obviously you hear the case deflection thing all the time, but those are a little bit harder to prove. Have you ever thought about that and then kind of looked at that, from an operations piece, and how do you kind of think about that?
Definitely have thought about it a lot. And this is something that we are currently just embarking on this initiative at Venafi, working to figure that out. I think you hit the nail on the head where, you talk about case deflection, you talk about, maybe to an extent customer health score, but things like the upsell, cross sell, even attrition and churn.
Exactly.
Renewals, like that is kind of uncharted territory. At least I've never seen anyone really put out those kind of like metrics and relationships. I think there's a lot to be thoughtful around like correlation and causation. So I think first of all, what we're looking to do is work on trying to figure out a baseline of, this is kind of the, this is the customer health score relative to community activity. And then that's kind of like the first step. And then you can drive in a little deeper and start looking at, okay, well, these are the, let's say you have a notification you're triggered from your customer success platform that a company or an account is in danger. Their health score is dipped down below that certain threshold and you're getting notified. And then you also see that, community activity is low. So maybe you start, sharing resources with them, your customer success managers, introducing them to various components of the community, showing how it can be a resource. And then over time, you can kind of see, okay, as their community interactions and their activity is going up, their customer health score goes up as well. And then maybe, and I'm kind of just thinking out loud here, but then, you can then take that and, did they attrit at the end of their renewal cycle or did they renew? And if they renewed, how much increase was their, ARR because of that community activity? And of course, there's many other factors that could be included in that. But then you can also look into, for example, if they are submitting ideas in the community and those ideas aren't being fulfilled or delivered on, then they attrit. Could that be one of the reasons why they decided not to renew? Whereas if they had a high idea delivery rate, the product team is listening to them, being transparent with them about the roadmap, things like that, including them in beta groups and focus groups within, that are provided as opportunities for community members who voted on those particular ideas. Maybe because they're having their business requirements fulfilled, they're more inclined to renew as well. So I think, right now it's not an exact science. I'm still kind of, like I said, we're just starting on this really fun project. And so, but those are kind of my initial thoughts on where we're going.
So, well, something you told me, I love this conversation because, you're telling me as an operations person, you think about this all day, every day, or stuff like this. Mm-hmm. And, you're digging into the data, you're obviously working with other people, to kind of do, so I love it. You have a very hard job, but, it's got to be extremely fulfilling. And I think that, you kind of have a niche job in a way, right? Like
super niche.
Think about it. There's not a lot of, now you're starting to see community operation managers, things like that, but it's not prevalent in the community management field, and I think it should be. I've been doing this Peers Over Beers for a long time, and the folks that I talk to, like Nicole Saunders from Zendesk, or folks like that, they're like, the first or second person I would hire is an operations person. It's kind of and the operation person helps so much, and so, like, even Elizabeth said that from Slack. She runs communities there. She's like, it's quite interesting. So I'm digging your role. Something you told me that call it our pre-show was that you before I go there is you posted on LinkedIn that 10% of the things that you should be thinking about is being uncomfortable in some ways. Take on a project that is slightly uncomfortable, and you're kind of doing that. I think on some of the stuff that we just talked about, but you just spoke at Pulse Gainsight, their conference. So tell me a little bit about that and about the uncomfortableness and things. I'm highly interested.
Yeah. You just hit so many. I have so many talking points about what you just said. Before I go over the 10% uncomfortable, yes, I think operations is super niche. I'd also like to say, like, yes, I'm diving into metrics and data and all of that, but I'm not a data analyst. I'm not, a BI specialist or anything like that. So part of my role is also forming those relationships and working cross-functionally with the owners of those platforms, the stakeholders on those other teams, figuring out what's important for them, and then also like a data person to help me go through all the data. Operations is so much more than just that. But right now, of course, I think that's top of mind for me. And I think, it's been really cool to see more talk and more designated roles on community operations. I think that's something that I've been personally trying to push. I want it to be its own swim lane on a community team. I want it to be recognized as a role right alongside the moderators and the community managers and all that. I think it's super important.
Your role is becoming way more and more important all the time. Like it's, getting those business outcomes of, hey, what is it that community brings from a value standpoint? Now you can't just say, well, if you look at the Google Analytics and blah, 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 those are good and SEO is good and highly important, but it's not about that. And it is partly about that, but it's more about, are you upselling, cross-selling? Are you doing case deflections? Are you bringing in leads? Are you, it's those higher level business kind of impacts and goals that you have to start kind of doing anyways. I mean, that's why I think it's ridiculous to not have somebody.
Right. And I feel like, it's different parts of the brain. So my strong suit is not engagement or interacting with people in the community. I love it. I love, meeting new community members and occasionally dabbling on that side of the world, in the front of the house. But that's not my strength area. And I similarly with, the amazing community managers that I've worked with, like the operational components aren't necessarily their fortes. I think it's, left brain, right brain things. And so I think every community manager has done operational things.
Yeah,
I think it's just the nature. Yeah, you have to, especially for those one person teams or any community that's grown or evolved or implemented a new program. All that needs operations. But again, is that really worth their time when they could be doing the things that they're the best at, being involved and engaging with the community members?
So I think, as a leader, it's important to maybe understand those things and maybe dabbled in it, but, communities becoming a lot more specialized these days when you think about content or what a community manager does every day, or a moderator, or, engagement person, operations, it's, so
Mhm.
I think hopefully over time, definitely your role is, if I had somebody like you, I mean, I think I think the somebody to drive the operational piece, and an organization that believes in community, which I think ours
Mhm.
does, but and puts big budgets, or at least enough budget to kind of do certain things on an operational standpoint, because some of that stuff you have to look at is integrations into certain platforms,
Yep.
and then pulling out the stuff, finding the time on a data analyst or data person's schedule, because they're doing you know top of the funnel stuff or whatever they do on a
Mhm.
daily basis. So having at least shared resources that will allow you to do that, and understanding within the company to do that, those things are hard, and I'm glad that Holly and team has really kind of pushed for some of that stuff, and I love what you guys are doing, and thinking about from a operational. Anyways, I
Thank you.
digress.
Thank
It's
you.
just very exciting to me. So
Yeah, no, I mean it's been really cool. Even in the last couple of years, for example, like CMX Summit 2 years ago, they didn't have community operations as a
mm-mm.
track, and so I messaged them, and it's like, why don't we add operations? Because I think people are interested in it. And now they have it this year for their track. They had it last year for their for Summit as well. It's just really
That's
cool to
awesome.
see. And I do a lot of, advising for people who are looking to build a business case to add a community operations person on their team, helping them write their job descriptions, also
Great.
helping people update their resumes. I think there's so much potential. And you don't need, I think community is something that a lot of people are interested in getting into. It's kind of one of those up and coming,
Yeah.
you know, fields, and people are talking about it more and more. And to get into community operations, you don't necessarily need a community background. I think
Yeah.
there's some innate skills and previous experiences that are really easy to kind of bring over. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about community operations.
No doubt. So tell me a little bit about your speech or your
Yeah.
presentation.
Sorry, I took you off on a
I
tangent
love it.
there.
Hey, it's Peers Over Beers. We could be like, virtually tipsy. Not really, but just get
Yeah.
off on some weird conversations.
Tipsy on ops. Opsy tipsy.
Tipsy, opsy tipsy. I like it with
Yeah.
Tiffany.
So yes, I was asked to, or given the opportunity to present at Gainsight's Pulse conference.
Hmm.
Gainsight, for those of you who don't know, is a customer success platform. They've recently acquired Insighted, which is a community platform, and they had a community track this year. And so they asked me to, present, and my wheelhouse is community operations. But I also thought about the audience. The majority of the people who are going to Gainsight are in customer success. And yes, there might be a couple community designated people in there, but ultimately I wanted to make the talk track relevant for the people who are there. So
Love it.
I learned very recently, actually, about customer success operations as its own role. And
Hmm.
my track leader at Gainsight, he was actually in CS Ops and was able to provide a lot of really good insight. And it's the same kind of challenge. It's a fairly new role. People are still trying to work on defining what it is and learning more about operations. It's very essential for a CS team. There's a lot of cross-functional work, just like in community. And
Hmm.
so my presentation was essentially working on finding that intersection and finding that shared goal between CS ops and community ops, and how the two can really work together to create operational excellence and a good operations framework between the two. We often work so closely together anyway. It really just makes sense to have a seamless flow from our tech stack and our processes, and making sure that community is incorporated throughout the customer success journey, and how to facilitate that from an operational perspective. And yes, one of my, I call them professional personal, or personal professional goals, is to be 10% uncomfortable at all times. I am terrified of falling into complacency and comfort. And, I think one of my other values is like humility, is knowing that you don't know everything and that you want to continue learning and you can make mistakes. And I mean, you could be the president of the world and still have something to learn, about Mars. So, that went off on a tangent too. So this was definitely something that was out of my comfort level. I've never used that sentence before, Chris.
Oh, yeah?
No, but I think I'm going to start using it from now on.
I love it. Maybe I'll make a quick hit video of it, and then post it. That's great. No, I think that, to me, it's a sign of, a very driven person, that is, look, I feel like the people that are, not to get off on another tangent, but that are highly successful and driven and really good at what they do is both driven and successful outside of what they, do, whether it's, outside of work, maybe you do some high intense exercising or mountain climbing or biking or whatever, maybe it's not exercise, maybe it's something else,
I love exercising.
Yeah. And so I just find that, highly successful people do other things so that they're just driven in every aspect of their lives, and putting that goal on yourself. And although 10% isn't 50%, which is 10% a lot, it's important to kind of step outside your comfort zone. And I love that, and I like this thought around the CS kind of operations and community operations. At least you starting to talk about it, because I'm sure there's some similarities. I mean, skills probably transfer pretty easily. I would assume.
Yeah.
Just different systems, different whatever, but kind of that same mindset. But, we have a customer success operations person. I don't know what the hell they do. I'm sure they're doing a bunch of stuff with Gainsight and spending a lot of time in that at the moment. And thinking about how to utilize that in a bigger way. Because Gainsight is a beast. It's not an easy system to just all of a sudden you build it. I mean, you can't just build it, it's like a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of data that goes into it. And, to spit out the outcomes that they want, it's not an easy task. So.
No, not at all. I give our Gainsight admin major kudos. He implemented it really quickly and it's already being used in our regular meetings, and, it has community in it and Salesforce information. It's very impressive.
Yeah. And, these are all the things I'm a little envious of, to be honest, Tiffany. So, but it's all about time. Sometimes organizations just aren't ready. And it's kind of, so I worked at a cybersecurity company for a few years as well. And I remember it's a company called Imperva. And so what we did was, so I built their community from scratch, and the things that I kind of pushed hard was enterprise search and SSO. At that time, those are huge undertakings, especially if you don't have it within other parts of, the digital systems, right? So customer logs in, so then they have to think of all the systems together, working together and doing all these things, but then also the enterprise search stuff. And so we didn't do it until kind of it took probably a year and a half to really start doing those things or thinking about those things, because one is I couldn't do it myself. You know what I mean? Like, you need either a PM to kind of run some of this stuff. You need somebody to kind of manage the whole thing. Then you need to bring in people that can do it and stuff like that. And so, but when it was ready, I just kind of slipped myself in there, and said, well, we'll do SSO and we'll do this in enterprise search. Now we can get some real live kind of data around, one is case deflection and things like that. And so we did that, and I would just kind of been part of that project. And so the same thing happened here at Reltio is I preached it, talked about it. Yeah, we need it. And then, no way we're going to do it, at the moment. But this woman came, her name is Megan. She runs our documentation team and now our UX team for the product. And she said, hey, we need enterprise search and SSO. And I was like, yes, we do. And so, but she kind of, and she has a team of people. So, she had a team, and so I just kind of slipped in with the SSO. Now we have SSO, and so that we just implemented that, and then so now I'll start over time to be able to get hard case deflection and then show data or dollars around some of that stuff. But again, I know it was kind of a long, kind of winded thing, but
Takes time.
at the end of the day, some organizations just aren't ready. And, I probably wouldn't have been ready because I couldn't have managed building a community from scratch and then doing all that other shit. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so I think just thinking about, where the organization is and those kinds of things, but I think it's key at the end of the day.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think there's a ton of companies out there that think they want to build community, but they don't necessarily quite understand the intent or the reason for it.
Yep.
And in those cases, a lot of it is setting up and getting the buy-in and enabling and educating everybody in the company before you have to build, because it's so cliche, but it takes a village. Like you need support from all of the other teams to really make a community successful. And if they don't understand it and they're not willing to go outside of their role, or that's not my job, or it's extra work, it's way more difficult to get the community up and running in a successful and sustainable way. I also see a lot of companies that start community kind of out of necessity. They have the components of community, so they have maybe ideas in one area, they have documentation in another area, they have forums in another area. It's like, okay, these are all running disparately, and now there's different owners and people aren't talking to each other, and there's no visibility across all of those programs. So bringing that together, that's when they're like, oh, this is community, we should bring in community people. And then it's like, okay, well, how do you do it? And we were talking about this in the pre-show too. It's like, okay, you can't just, turn it on one day and expect magic to happen. It takes time to nurture and build. And there's things that you need to do before launch, especially from an operations perspective. Like you need to be able to see the data. You need to be able to allow people to join the community, and what are the processes and how do you track everything? So I don't know. I love community. It's so much fun.
It is. Well, it's been really good. Any kind of thoughts, around maybe it's, the operations kind of view around, what you do, or just for others that are kind of listening around, the community operations role? Put you on the spot a little bit.
If you are a person looking to get into community operations, I would say start thinking about your role in terms of like not only program management. I think that's a unwritten kind of role is, you're the organized person. So oftentimes you end up kind of managing community programs and, keeping everybody on the team on track. But also start thinking about, like what are some processes or things that you've done to streamline or remove bottlenecks or blockers? How are you making things more efficient? And make sure you highlight that in your resume. I have a presentation that I did a couple of years ago on how to sell the value of community operations. And in part of that, I kind of talk about how to quantify that streamlining of effort that you're doing and helping to impact your team and your business. So feel free to leverage that if you're interested in getting into community operations.
How do we leverage that?
Like where to find it?
Yeah.
It's on YouTube, I believe. It's a CMX Summit 2019 or 2020.
Just YouTube your name?
I think so. Or you can do, Tiffany Oda, and then selling the value of community operations.
Okay.
Thank you. And then also, I think if you are someone who's looking to hire, really look at what is taking time away from you interacting with your community. What are your teams and your company's priorities, and how can you provide operational improvements on those areas? Is your tech stack talking with one another? Or is everything kind of siloed? Do you have readily available data that you can do? Or are you like copy pasting things into an Excel sheet from different areas and trying to put it together? Also, like in your processes, if you're spending X amount of time a week doing a manual repetitive process and you have, your growth trajectory, you can kind of do some math to see like, okay, well, I'm spending 8 hours a week on this right now. in 6 months, I'm going to be spending, 15 hours a week on
Yeah.
this. And is it really worth my time? So there are ways that you can, find out and create that actual business case and provide that value in terms of, this is why I need a designated operations person on my team.
That's been really good. And I was looking at your LinkedIn earlier, and something that I really liked around kind of you really on so you used to work at Salesforce, you're the senior program manager of Trailblazer Communities,
Mm-hmm.
but you put like a list of things that you did and accomplished, but it's obviously from more of an operational background, and it's really good. Like I was like, oh, okay. It makes a lot of sense to kind of what you did over there, right? It's like, okay, that's what she means, and so, but that's for others too. So if you go to Tiffany's LinkedIn profile, which I'll push in the YouTube and also the podcast, but you can kind of see where she put that in there. So it's really good.
I haven't actually looked at it in a while, so thank you.
Well,
to go and double check everything.
It's just like anything. We could always modify different things, but it's really good in the sense of, I sort of got a glimpse of what you did, beforehand. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been really good, Tiffany. I really appreciate you coming on. This is, for me, it was extremely insightful on the role of, community operations person. So you're the director now of community operations over at Venafi. It's a cybersecurity company. So it's really cool. And what you're doing with the CS team now and community. So definitely would love to have you back on to maybe talk about that project in a month or two to see, progress and things, and maybe any other topic that you might want to talk about. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, this has been so much fun. I'm always down to just geek out and go off on tangents and talk about this kind of stuff. So thank you so much for having me on, Chris. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel, and
Tiffany Oda.
thanks, Tiffany.
Thanks.